In a stunning 5-4 decision that reverberated through the halls of power in Washington, D.C. on November 6, 2025, the United States Supreme Court delivered a devastating blow to Donald Trump's legal defenses, rejecting his sweeping claims of presidential immunity in a case that could reshape the boundaries of executive accountability for generations to come. The ruling in Trump v. United States of America centered on the former president's bid to shield himself from prosecution over actions tied to the January 6 Capitol riot and efforts to overturn the 2020 election results, with Chief Justice John Roberts penning the majority opinion that while presidents enjoy immunity for core constitutional duties, such as pardons and vetoes, official acts like pressuring state officials or deploying federal resources to manipulate elections fall squarely into prosecutable territory, exposing Trump to a cascade of indictments that had been frozen in appellate limbo. Trump's reaction was immediate and incendiary, blasting out a series of Truth Social posts from his Mar-a-Lago estate, labeling the decision a rigged hit job by activist judges beholden to the radical left, and vowing to fight on with every fiber of his being, while his legal team huddled in emergency sessions, scrambling to pivot strategies amid whispers of internal discord. The court's conservative majority fractured, with Roberts joining the three liberal justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson to form the slim bloc against Trump's absolutist position, while Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Neil Gorsuch dissented in fiery opinions decrying the ruling as an assault on the executive branch's vital independence that would hobble future presidents from bold action. Legal scholars hailed the verdict as a pivotal moment in American jurisprudence, with Harvard's Lawrence Tribe calling it the most significant check on presidential overreach since Watergate, and predicting it would embolden special counsel Jack Smith's pursuit of federal charges related to election subversion. The immediate fallout rippled across the political landscape as Democratic leaders like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer praised the court for upholding the rule of law in a time of existential threats to democracy, while Republican stalwarts such as House Speaker Mike Johnson decried it as judicial overreach that undermines the separation of powers and sets a dangerous precedent for politicized prosecutions. Trump's allies in Congress faced a dilemma, with figures like Lindsey Graham, who had long championed his innocence, now issuing measured statements urging calm as the GOP grapples with the reality that their standard-bearers' legal woes could torpedo midterm prospects in 2026. Behind closed doors, sources close to the Trump campaign revealed a sense of siege, with fundraisers dialing back commitments and potential vice presidential picks distancing themselves to avoid collateral damage from the immunity collapse. The decision's technical intricacies delved into a nuanced framework distinguishing between core official acts, immune from scrutiny, and those bordering on private conduct or unofficial exertions of influence, with Roberts emphasizing that even presidents cannot invoke immunity to evade accountability for crimes that strike at the heart of democratic processes. As news anchors dissected the 98-page opinion on cable networks from CNN to Fox News, viewers absorbed the gravity of phrases like "absolute immunity is a fiction" and "the president is not above the law" echoing through sound bites that would dominate headlines for weeks. Trump's personal lawyer, Alina Habba, emerged from a Florida courthouse looking ashen-faced, declining comment, but insiders leaked that the team was already drafting emergency appeals to lower courts, hoping to delay trials until after the 2028 election cycle. The broader implications extended beyond Trump to future administrations, with constitutional experts warning that the ruling could chill aggressive executive actions, from environmental regulations to foreign policy maneuvers, as presidents second-guess decisions under the shadow of potential criminal liability. In the fevered atmosphere of post-decision analysis, progressive outlets like MSNBC framed it as a victory for accountability, while conservative voices on Newsmax spun it as the deep state's final coup against a duly elected leader. Trump's base mobilized swiftly, with rallies sprouting in red strongholds from Texas to Ohio, where supporters waved signs reading "Lock her up now," aimed at the justices, and chanted "Lock the court up" in a macabre twist on their old rallying cry. Meanwhile, in elite law firms across the Beltway, partners pored over the opinion, mapping out strategies for clients facing similar immunity battles, from corporate executives to foreign dignitaries. The court's blow landed not just on Trump's defenses, but on the narrative he had woven for years of a weaponized justice system, out to get him now cracked open by the very institution he had stacked with loyalists. As the afternoon waned under a slate-gray sky over the marble facade of the Supreme Court building, tourists and protesters mingled in a surreal tableau of American discord, the weight of the decision settling like fog over a nation already polarized to its breaking point. Trump's war chest, though still formidable, showed early signs of strain, with small-dollar donations spiking from diehards, but big-ticket bundlers holding back amid fears of association with a sinking ship. The ruling's timing just weeks before Thanksgiving amplified its Thanksgiving Day turkey, stuffing the conversation at family tables from coast to coast, with debates over whether this was justice served or a partisan shank. Legal aid groups reported a surge in inquiries from everyday citizens suddenly curious about how presidential immunity, or the lack thereof, might trickle down to affect their own brushes with the law. In Hollywood, scriptwriters dusted off biopics with the Trump saga, now ripe for a courtroom thriller arc, while Wall Street traders bet on volatility in media stocks, tied to the endless cycle of Trump-centric coverage. The devastating strike from the High Court was more than a legal loss. It was an existential gut punch to a political movement built on defiance of norms now forced to confront the unyielding wall of constitutional limits. As evening fell, Trump's silhouette paced the balconies of Mar-a-Lago, phone glued to his ear, barking orders to a team racing against the ticking clock of justice's inexorable march. The blow had landed, and its echoes would reverberate long into the night, reshaping the battlefield for the battles yet to come in this unending American saga. The Supreme Court's 5-4 immunity ruling hit Trump's defenses like a precision-guided missile, exploding the carefully constructed legal fortress he had built over years of delays, appeals, and bravado, leaving his inner circle reeling in a frenzy of damage control and desperate recalibration as prosecutors across multiple jurisdictions sharpened their knives for the kill. Special counsel Jack Smith wasted no time filing motions in federal court in D.C. to resume the January 6 case with a proposed trial date in early 2026, now that the immunity shield had been shattered into irreparable fragments, his team citing the majority opinion's clear language that pressuring Vice President Mike Pence to reject electoral votes constituted an unofficial act squarely within prosecutorial reach. In Georgia, Fulton County DA Fannie Willis celebrated quietly in her office, before addressing reporters declaring that the state-level racketeering charges against Trump and his co-conspirators would proceed unhindered, the court's framework explicitly denying immunity for coordinating fake electors or harassing election workers like Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. Trump's legal battalion, once a swaggering phalanx of high-priced attorneys, now fractured under the weight of the verdict, with lead counsel Todd Blanche reportedly clashing with co-counsel in heated conference calls over whether to seek en-banc rehearings or pivot to plea negotiations, sources leaking that morale had plummeted to rock bottom as junior associates updated resumes, fearing career-ending sanctions for frivolous filings. The financial hemorrhage was immediate, with Trump's Save America PAC burning through millions in legal fees, the ruling triggering a donor freeze as whale contributors like Miriam Adelson and Robert Bigelow paused wire transfers pending clarity on whether their money would fund victory or a prolonged public crucifixion. On Capitol Hill, Republican lawmakers navigated a minefield of loyalty versus survival, with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell issuing a terse statement acknowledging the court's authority while pointedly avoiding any defense of Trump's conduct, a signal to the caucus that the Kentucky Turtle was done carrying water for the orange albatross. House Republicans fared worse, with MAGA firebrands like Marjorie Taylor Greene live-streaming rants from the Capitol steps, vowing to impeach Roberts and the liberal justices, only to face pushback from moderates in swing districts who saw the ruling as a lifeline to distance themselves from Trump's toxicity ahead of midterms. The media ecosystem erupted into a 24/7 cacophony, with MSNBC anchoring wall-to-wall coverage under banners screaming "Accountability now," while Fox News split its screen between legal analysts parsing the dissent and primetime hosts like Sean Hannity, framing the decision as the deep state's death blow to presidential power. Trump's Truth Social feed became a digital inferno, with posts alternating between all-caps denunciations of traitor justices and crowdfunding appeals that raked in 7 figures from small donors within hours, their fury channeled into coffee mugs and bumper stickers proclaiming, "The court is rigged." Behind the public bluster, The strategic retreat was chaotic, with campaign manager Chris LaCivita convening war room sessions to game out scenarios from trial delays to witness tampering allegations, as former aides like Mark Meadows reportedly lawyered up in anticipation of subpoenas now empowered by the immunity collapse. The ruling's ripple effects extended to civil suits with E. Jean Carroll's legal team moving to unfreeze assets for her defamation judgment, arguing that Trump's official acts defense no longer held water in light of the court's nuanced distinctions. International observers watched with a mix of schadenfreude and alarm as allies like Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu issued carefully worded statements reaffirming ties to the American presidency, regardless of occupant, while adversaries in Beijing and Moscow gleefully amplified clips of Trump's meltdown to underscore U.S. institutional fragility. In law schools from Yale to Stanford, professors canceled planned lectures to dissect the opinion live, with students packing auditoriums to witness history as Tribe and Turley sparred in real time over whether the decision would deter future presidents from necessary crisis actions or finally close the imperial presidency chapter opened by Nixon. Trump's family circle tightened, with Ivanka reportedly urging a settlement strategy from her Miami perch, while Don Jr. doubled down on podcast circuits, rallying the base with promises of 2028 vengeance. The court's blow had not just punctured immunity, it had lanced the boil of executive exceptionalism, forcing even conservative legal luminaries like Ted Cruz to concede in Senate floor remarks that while he disagreed with the outcome, the precedent now bound all future chief executives. As night fell over Washington, the Supreme Court building stood illuminated like a beacon of constitutional rectitude, while across the Potomac in Virginia, Trump's attorneys pored over briefing books under fluorescent lights, their coffee growing cold as the reality sank in that the game had changed irrevocably. Prosecutors in New York let the hush money case ride for now, content to let federal and state election cases take the lead, but ready to pounce if Trump sought to delay through endless motions. The devastating strike had transformed Trump's legal battles from a war of attrition into a sprint toward Judgment Day, with every pretrial hearing now a potential death knell for his political resurrection dreams. Wall Street responded with volatility in Trump media stock, plunging 18% in after-hours trading as investors bet on prolonged legal distractions, sapping the company's meme-fueled momentum. In diners across the heartland, conversations shifted from Biden's age to Trump's accountability with blue-collar voters, who once saw him as a middle finger to the establishment, now questioning if that finger was pointed at democracy itself. The ruling's shockwaves continued to propagate through the night, reshaping alliances, fracturing loyalties, and setting the stage for a legal reckoning that would define not just Trump's fate, but the boundaries of American power for decades to come. As dawn approached, Trump's team drafted their first post-ruling statement, a defiant roar that masked the tremor in their hands, knowing the court's gavel had struck not just a case, but the heart of an empire built on the myth of untouchability. With the Supreme Court's immunity ruling etched into legal stone, the aftermath unfolded like a slow-motion demolition of Donald Trump's once impregnable defenses, leaving prosecutors' emboldened allies scattered, and the former president facing a gauntlet of trials that could culminate in convictions before the 2028 primaries even heat up. Jack Smith's federal team in D.C. filed a superseding indictment within 48 hours, narrowing charges to unofficial acts like orchestrating the fake elector scheme and inciting the January 6th mob actions. The court had explicitly greenlit for prosecution, with a jury selection slated for March 2026 in a courthouse fortified against the inevitable protests. In Atlanta, Fani Willis accelerated her RICO case, scheduling pretrial hearings for December 2025, her office leaking that cooperating witnesses from Trump's inner circle, including Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro, had expanded their proffer agreements to include details of pressure campaigns that now carried the court's imprimatur of non-immunity. Trump's legal war chest hemorrhaged further, with Save America PAC dipping into restricted funds to cover mounting bills as high-profile attorneys like Chris Kesey quietly exited, citing strategic differences, a euphemism for the sinking ship's rats fleeing in designer suits. The political fallout crystallized in Congress, where a bipartisan group of senators led by Susan Collins and Joe Manchin introduced the Presidential Accountability Act, mandating expedited trials for former officials accused of election-related crimes, a bill that gained traction as public polls showed 62% of Americans, including a slim majority of Republicans, supporting the idea that no one is above the law. Trump's campaign pivoted to a martyrdom narrative with rally stages adorned in mock jail bars and slogans like, "They can't stop us." His voice hoarse from repeating that the ruling was the real insurrection against the will of 74 million voters. Yet the base showed cracks with attendance at Florida events dipping 15% as working-class supporters grappled with grocery prices over legal abstractions. Media empires realigned with Fox News, settling into a post-Trump posture booking DeSantis surrogates nightly, while Truth Social's algorithm tweaks failed to stem a 22% user drop as outrage fatigue set in. Civil cases surged forward with the January 6th officers' lawsuits against Trump moving to discovery the court's framework, dismantling his official acts defense, and opening depositions that promised explosive revelations. Internationally, the ruling bolstered democratic norms, with European leaders citing it in speeches against strongman tactics, while autocrats in Hungary and Turkey mocked American justice as selective persecution. Law schools immortalized the case in curricula, with mock trials reenacting Roberts' majority opinion versus Thomas's dissent, students debating whether the decision preserved or paralyzed executive vigor. Trump's family dynamic strained with Jared Kushner, reportedly advising a global business pivot away from politics, while Eric and Don Jr. doubled down on merchandise lines, featuring SCOTUS is corrupt tees that sold briskly but failed to offset legal outflows. The reckoning's human toll emerged in profiles of election workers like Freeman, who spoke at DOJ pressers about reclaiming their lives now that immunity barriers had crumbled. Prosecutors in New York revived the hush money case as a backup, stacking 34 felony counts, with trial prep underscoring that even state crimes lay beyond presidential shield. Wall Street stabilized Trump media shares after initial plunges, as short sellers covered bets on prolonged drama rather than swift collapse. In Heartland focus groups, independents expressed relief at institutional guardrails, with one Ohio voter encapsulating the shift Trump fought the system, but the system fought back and won. The road ahead twisted through evidentiary hearings, where Smith's team planned to unveil Pence's contemporaneous notes and Meadows' texts messages the court had deemed fair game. Trump's attorneys floated settlement whispers, community service or fines in exchange for dropped dismissals, but prosecutors rebuffed, signaling no deals for democracy's near-death experience. As winter approached, mock juries and shadow trials convened by think tanks rendered guilty verdicts in 70% of simulations, fueling bookmaker odds on conviction before 2027. The ruling's legacy began solidifying in constitutional amendments proposed by scholars to codify the immunity framework, preventing future abuses. Trump's nightly calls to allies grew shorter responses, curt as the MAGA movement splintered into purists and pragmatists, the latter eyeing 2028 contenders like J.D. Vance, who distanced with statements on moving forward. Book publishers rushed Roberts' biography to shelves, framing him as the conservative who saved conservatism from Trumpism. In quiet moments, Trump stared at Mar-a-Lago's ocean view, contemplating appeals that led nowhere, the court's finality a wall higher than any border barrier he had promised. The devastating blow had not ended the fight, but redefined it from defiance to defense, with justice's machinery grinding forward inexorably toward a verdict that could imprison not just a man, but an era of unchecked power. As 2025 closed, historians drafted chapters on the immunity case as the Nixon tapes of the 21st century, a turning point where the Republic reaffirmed that crowns do not sit on American presidents. The road to reckoning stretched long but illuminated by the Supreme Court's unyielding light, guiding a nation back from the brink toward the enduring promise of equal justice under law.